Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, we love to really dig deep into topics you're curious about, and today is no exception. We're talking about something I know a lot of you have been wanting to get better at,
Yeah,
building better English sentences.
absolutely.
You sent us some really cool stuff
Mm.
on just basic grammar fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I am so excited to dive in with our expert and just see
Yeah.
what we can uncover today.
I think it's so interesting how we often think of sentence structure as just this writing tool.
Right.
But, really, it's the foundation for all clear communication.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about everyday conversations
Yeah.
or even formal speeches, it all goes back to how we structure those sentences.
It's so true, and I think you can always tell when somebody is not structuring their sentences well
Yes.
because it's so hard to follow their train of thought.
Yes.
So where do we even begin with building a good sentence?
Well, every sentence needs a verb, I would say, to give it life. So think about those one-word commands like go or listen. Those are actually complete sentences, believe it or not.
Huh.
They're called imperatives, and they're like the most stripped-down form of communication.
Wow.
Just pure action.
Like if you were in a burning building and you yelled, "Run!"
Exactly.
You don't need any fancy grammar there.
No.
It's just pure urgency. But those are pretty rare, right?
They are pretty rare.
In terms of how we're actually building out sentences, most of them need a little bit more meat on their bones.
Exactly. Most sentences will have a subject, the who or what is doing that action,
Right.
followed by that all-important verb.
Okay,
So instead of run, you have he runs or the cat naps.
got it.
Simple, but it gets the point across.
Subject plus verb. Okay, so then I'm guessing you can change up the tense of the verb.
Yeah.
Like he ran versus he runs.
Exactly.
Without messing up that basic structure.
Absolutely. Past, present, simple, continuous, all of that. The basic subject-verb structure is the core.
Okay,
It's like the backbone of the sentence holding everything together.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. But let's be honest. He runs is not exactly winning any literary awards.
No.
How do we spice things up? How do
Yeah.
we add some detail? How do we make it more captivating?
That's where the real fun begins. So you can start adding information with things like adverbs.
Mhm.
Instead of he runs, you could say he runs quickly or he runs around the park every morning.
Okay.
And suddenly you have this whole picture in your mind.
So we're adding layers without changing that core subject verb.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like building a house. You start with the foundation,
Yeah.
and then you add the walls and the windows and maybe like a fancy porch.
Yes.
But he runs around the park every morning, still follows that subject verb pattern.
That's right.
But now it's bursting with detail.
Exactly. But just like you can't put a window where a door should be.
Right.
There are rules about what can follow a verb in a sentence,
Yes.
and that's where the idea of complements comes in.
Compliments.
Yes.
So is that like when I say your explanation is crystal clear? Okay, I'll stop with the compliments.
Yeah.
But seriously, what are compliments in grammar terms?
So a complement is basically the part of the sentence that makes the verb feel complete.
Okay.
So if you were to just say, she enjoys,
Yeah.
it leaves you hanging right.
Yeah, it does.
You're kind of waiting to hear what she enjoys.
Mm-mm.
So you might add a compliment and say she enjoys reading
Uh,
or she enjoys spicy food.
Gotcha. So the compliment completes the thought.
Yes,
It's like the missing puzzle piece.
exactly.
And I'm guessing compliments can be more than just like reading or spicy food.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a noun.
They can be nouns, verbs, adjectives,
Oh, wow.
or even adverbs. They can even be entire phrases acting as one unit.
Hold on. Phrases as compliments.
Yeah.
So if I said, she enjoys relaxing on the porch swing that my grandfather built,
Yes.
that whole chunk about the porch swing
Yes.
is one big noun compliment.
Exactly. It's a long phrase, but it's functioning as a single noun in the sentence, adding that rich detail without changing the fundamental structure.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So knowing what kind of word can follow another
Yeah.
is like having the instruction manual for building sentences.
Yes.
You need the right parts in the right places.
You got it. And this is going to become even more crucial when we start working with more complex verbs and sentence structures.
Okay.
But before we jump into that, I'm curious for you.
Yeah.
What stands out to you so far about these building blocks?
I think what's striking me is that there's this sort of hidden structure
Yes.
beneath the surface of every sentence.
Yes.
Like a secret code almost.
I love that.
And it's fascinating to see how even the simplest sentences are so carefully constructed.
That's a great point. And once you start to see that code,
Yeah.
you realize how much power you have
Yeah.
as a communicator to manipulate these building blocks to craft sentences that are compelling and just full of nuance.
I already feel more confident
I love it.
about my sentence building.
Yeah.
But I know that we've mainly talked about simple sentences so far, and things can get way more complex. What happens when we start joining sentences together?
Right.
Is that where those dreaded conjunctions come in?
That is exactly where those conjunctions come in.
Right.
They're like bridges connecting different ideas. But before we dive into that whole world of complex sentences,
Okay.
let's take a step back and explore how adjectives and adverbs fit into the picture.
Okay.
They're like the spices that just add flavor and depth to our sentences.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, adjectives and adverbs.
Yes.
I remember learning about these in school, but
Yeah.
a little refresher never hurts.
Right.
So adjectives, those are the words that describe nouns, right?
Exactly.
Like fluffy cat or delicious pizza.
Yes. Adjectives add those vivid details that help us really visualize and experience that noun more fully.
Okay.
They're like the paint that brings the picture to life.
So adjectives are all about adding color and texture.
Uh-huh.
What about adverbs? Those are the ones that describe verbs, right?
You got it. Adverbs tell us more about how an action is performed.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, she walked,
Right.
you could say she walked quickly or she walked gracefully.
Right. So adverbs are like those little modifiers
Yes.
that fine-tune the verb.
Yes.
Like she walked angrily paints a very different picture
Very different.
than she walked happily.
Exactly. And adverbs can be tricky because they can pop up in different parts of the sentence.
Oh, really?
You can have adverbs that modify verbs like he ran quickly,
Uh-huh.
but you can also have adverbs that modify adjectives like he's incredibly fast.
Okay.
Or even other adverbs like he runs remarkably quickly.
Adverbs are sneaky little things.
They are.
They really do add a lot of nuance, though.
They do.
It's like they're the secret sauce of a sentence, adding just the right amount of flavor.
They really are. And while adjectives and adverbs are really powerful tools, they can also be overused.
Right.
A sentence packed with too many modifiers
Yeah.
can feel really cluttered and lose its impact. It's all about finding that right balance.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of going overboard with adjectives
I
sometimes.
think we all are.
It's so tempting to try and describe everything in such detail.
We've all been there. But yeah, sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
A well-placed adjective or adverb
Right.
can be much more effective than a string of them.
Okay, that's good advice.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to be more mindful of my modifier usage
Good.
from now on.
Yeah.
So we've covered verbs, subjects, complements,
Yes.
adjectives, adverbs.
We have.
Are we ready to tackle the world of complex sentences now?
I think so.
I'm still a bit intimidated by those conjunctions.
You and everyone else. Conjunctions can seem confusing at first,
Yeah.
but they're really just connectors.
No.
They allow us to combine simple sentences
Right.
into more complex structures and express these richer and more nuanced ideas.
Okay.
That
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess the key is to understand
Yeah.
how these conjunctions work,
Exactly.
how they connect different parts of a sentence.
Absolutely. And to do that, we need to talk about clauses.
Okay.
You see, every sentence is made up of at least one clause,
Right.
which is basically a group of words that contains a subject and a verb.
So a clause is like a mini sentence
Yeah.
within a sentence.
That's a great way to think about it. And there are two main types of clauses:
Okay.
independent and dependent.
Okay.
An independent clause can stand alone as a complete sentence.
Okay.
It expresses a complete thought.
Gotcha.
A dependent clause, on the other hand, needs to be attached to an independent clause to make sense.
Okay.
It's like a Tagalog that needs a buddy.
So an independent clause is like a confident solo artist,
Yes.
and a dependent clause is more like a backup singer
Yes.
who needs a lead vocalist.
I love that analogy.
Okay.
Now, conjunctions come into play when we want to connect these clauses together.
Right.
When you use a conjunction to combine two independent clauses, you're basically creating a compound sentence where both parts are equally important.
Got it. Can you give me an example?
Sure. How about this? She loves to read, and she writes poetry in her spare time.
Okay.
Both she loves to read and she writes poetry in her spare time could be standalone sentences,
Right.
but the conjunction and allows us to link them together,
Yeah.
showing a connection between these two activities.
I see. So and is like a bridge
Yeah,
connecting two equally strong ideas.
exactly.
What about other conjunctions?
Yeah.
Do they all work the same way?
Not exactly. Different conjunctions create different relationships between clauses,
Okay.
but shows contrast, like he wanted to go to the party, but he was too tired,
Hmm.
or presents a choice, like you can have cake or you can have ice cream.
Okay.
And so indicates a cause and effect relationship, like, it was raining, so we stayed inside.
Wow, there are so many possibilities.
I know, right?
It's like a whole toolbox for building sentences with all these different meanings and shades of emphasis.
Exactly. And you can even string multiple independent clauses together using conjunctions. It's like building a chain,
Wow.
each link representing a complete thought.
Okay.
For example, she finished her work early, so she decided to go for a walk, but then it started to rain, so she went back home and made a cup of tea.
Okay, that's a pretty long chain of events.
It is.
It's grammatically correct,
Yeah.
but it feels a bit overwhelming,
Right.
like too much information crammed into one sentence.
You're right. While you can technically keep adding clauses, it's often better to keep your sentences manageable for the sake of clarity.
Right.
A few well-constructed clauses are usually enough to convey a complex thought without losing your reader or listener.
Good point. It's like trying to juggle too many balls.
Yes.
Eventually, you're bound to drop one.
Exactly.
So we've talked about connecting independent clauses.
Yes.
But what about those depending clauses?
Right.
The ones that need a buddy to make sense.
Yeah.
How do they work with conjunctions?
So dependent clauses also use conjunctions.
Okay.
But these conjunctions act a little bit differently.
Correct.
Instead of connecting two equal parts,
Right.
they create a relationship of dependency,
Okay.
where one clause relies on the other for its meaning.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Thank
Can
you.
you give me an example?
Sure. Consider the sentence, I'll go to the store if you need anything.
Okay.
The first part, I'll go to the store, that's our independent clause,
Right.
standing strong on its own.
Yeah.
The second part, if you need anything,
Yeah.
that's our dependent clause.
Okay.
It can't stand alone because it starts with the conjunction if,
Right.
which creates a condition for the first clause.
Ah, I see. So the dependent clause is like adding a layer of complexity,
Exactly.
providing extra information or context.
Yes.
And I'm guessing there are other conjunctions besides if
Yes.
that introduce these dependent clauses.
They're right. There's a whole bunch of them because although, since, each one creating a slightly different relationship between the clauses.
Yeah.
It's like having a set of tools for expressing these different types of logic and nuance.
This is making me realize how much sophistication we pack into our everyday communication
Right.
without even realizing it.
Yeah.
We're constantly using these complex structures to express our thoughts and ideas.
It's truly amazing, isn't it? And there's another type of dependent clause that we haven't even touched on yet called relative clauses.
Ooh.
These are clauses that provide extra information about a noun in the sentence.
Okay.
And they often start with words like who, which, or that.
Ooh, relative clauses. Those are the ones that always trip me up.
Yes.
Like the book that I borrowed from the library is overdue.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where those commas go is a real headache.
You're not alone. Relative clauses can be tricky,
Yeah.
but they're incredibly useful for adding detail and creating those layered sentences that make writing interesting.
Okay, I'm ready for a relative clause example. Hit me with it.
All right, how about this? The musician who played the violin captivated the audience.
Okay.
So the main part, the musician captivated the audience.
Uh-huh.
That's our independent clause, standing strong on its own.
Right.
Then we have who played the violin,
Yeah.
which is our relative clause, giving us that extra information about the musician.
I see. It's like a little side note,
Yes,
adding depth to the main sentence.
exactly.
And that who is the key to unlocking that extra information.
Exactly.
This is making me realize how much we can do with just a few words.
Yeah.
How we can create these really intricate structures to express our thoughts.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? And this is just scratching the surface of English sentence construction. There's a whole world of grammatical nuances and stylistic choices to explore.
I'm feeling inspired to go back and look at my own writing
Yes.
and see if I can spot all these different sentence structures
I love that.
we've been talking about. It's like having a whole new set of lenses to view language through.
Exactly. And remember, while understanding grammar is important,
Yeah,
the goal isn't to become a walking textbook. Language is meant to be fluid and expressive.
right. It's about using these tools to communicate more effectively,
Yes.
whether we're writing a novel, sending an email, or just chatting with a friend.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today,
Yeah.
what is one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
If I had to choose one, I would say it's the power of awareness.
Okay.
Once you start paying attention to the structure of sentences,
Yeah.
to the way the different parts work together, you become a more conscious and skillful communicator.
I love that. It's like anything else.
Yeah.
The more you practice and the more you pay attention,
Yes.
the better you become.
Absolutely.
And that awareness opens up a whole new world of possibilities in
Yes.
terms of how you use language.
Absolutely. So I encourage you to keep exploring, keep experimenting,
Yeah,
and most importantly, keep having fun with language.
that's fantastic advice. And before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a little challenge.
Okay?
Think about a sentence you've written recently that you're particularly proud of.
Okay.
Now bring it down.
Yeah.
Can you identify the different parts we've talked about today?
Yeah.
The subject, the verb, the complements, the clauses, the conjunctions.
I love it.
Seeing how all these pieces fit together can give you a whole new appreciation for the art of crafting a sentence.
It's like taking a masterpiece apart to see how it was made, and in the process, learning the techniques of the master.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to explore this fascinating world of English sentences. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.